Imagine a life where blessings don't just trickle, they torrent. A life where your needs are not just met, but exceeded in every way. The truth is, that life is not just a dream, it's your divine inheritance. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal the prophetic insights that will activate your Chosen One status and manifest breakthrough overflow, my friends, my family, those who feel a hunger for more than this world offers. Can you feel it? That quiet tug on your spirit, a whisper in your soul that suggests your life is meant for a different story. It is the feeling of being set apart, not through any effort of your own, but by a hand far greater. You have always known deep within that you were marked for something more. This is not about a title or a position. It is about a divine assignment. It is about understanding what it means to be the chosen one. And within that calling there are specific prophetic keys. They are not locked away in a distant heaven. They are waiting in the quiet places of your obedience, in the moments you choose to trust the one who chose you. These keys do not just open a door, they unlock a divine overflow, a current of provision, purpose, and peace that the world cannot explain and cannot stop. So I want you to hold on to that feeling, that quiet knowing in your heart. Because in a moment, we are going to look closely at the first of these three keys, a key that might be lying forgotten, in a place you have already walked past. If this is speaking to the hunger inside of you, if you are ready to step into your overflow, then let me know your heart is here with me. Like this video, comment the number 7 if you are ready to receive your portion, and subscribe so you do not miss the key that changes everything. That quiet knowing in your heart, because in a moment we are going to look closely at the first of these three keys, a key that might be lying forgotten in a place you have already walked past. This ache, this divine discontent, is not a sign that you are failing. It is not a symptom of a life gone wrong. On the contrary, my friend, it is the primary evidence that you are chosen. It is the fingerprint of God on your spirit, a holy restlessness that refuses to be satisfied with the ordinary, with the empty rituals of a religion that has lost its fire. The world will try to diagnose this ache as ambition, as greed, or as a simple case of wanting more. But you know it is deeper than that. It is a soul-deep recognition that you were fashioned for a different realm, built for a different atmosphere. You feel like a stranger in a familiar land because you are. Your spirit remembers its true home, and it aches for it. This ache is the very thing the enemy uses to try and condemn you. He whispers that you are ungrateful, that you should be happy with what you have. He points to others who seem content with so much less, and he hisses that your hunger is a flaw. But I am here to tell you that your hunger is your credential. That hollow place inside you, that space that feels like it can never be filled by any accomplishment, any relationship, any amount of money, is not a void. It is a vessel. God carved it out within you himself. He created a container for his glory, a reservoir for his overflow. And that empty space is because it is waiting for its divine assignment. It is waiting to be filled with a purpose that shakes the foundations of hell, with a joy that defies your circumstances, with a peace that rewrites the rules of your reality. Think of David, a young boy tending sheep, anointed as a future king. From that moment on, he carried the ache. Sitting in a field, he knew he was made for a palace. Facing a giant, he knew his destiny was greater than that of the trembling soldiers around him. Even when he was sitting on the throne, the ache remained, because an earthly throne could never fully satisfy the one who was chosen for eternal covenant. The ache pushed him, guided him, and ultimately led him to the heart of God. This is why so many people spend their lives running from this feeling. They try to numb it, to silence it with noise, with business, with temporary pleasures. They fill the God-shaped vessel with everything but God, and they wonder why they still feel so empty, so restless. But the chosen one does not run from the ache. The chosen one learns to listen to it. They recognize it as their internal compass. always pointing them toward their destiny. It is the homing beacon that will not let you settle for a life that is less than the one you were appointed to live. It is the proof that you are not forgotten, but rather you have been selected for a story that is far grander than you can currently see. So do not curse that feeling of being out of place. Do not apologize for your deep hunger for more of God, for more purpose, for more meaning. That ache is the confirmation that you are His. And He does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. He is not looking for the full, He is looking for the hungry, because only the hungry have the capacity to receive the feast He is preparing. And so we come to understand that this ache is not our enemy, but our guide. It is the map that leads us away from the shallow waters of a complacent life and into the deep, turbulent, and glorious waters of our destiny. But a map is useless if you do not know how to read it, and a destiny is unreachable if the doors along the way remain locked. This is where the promise of the prophetic keys comes in. These are not principles of positive thinking or steps to self-improvement. They are divine mechanisms, forged in heaven, designed to align our spirit with the timeline of our calling. They are the specific, intentional turns we must make in the Spirit to unlock what has been held in reserve for us. Many believers live their entire lives standing before a door labeled Overflow, twisting the knob with all their might, praying over it, fasting over it. What if it never budges? They grow weary and disillusioned, wondering if the promise was ever real. The problem is never the promise. The problem is always the key. You see, the kingdom of God operates on a different system than the world. In the world, you force your way through, you push, you strive, you leverage your own strength. But in the Spirit, you yield, you submit, you use the key. These keys are often counterintuitive. They feel small. They seem insignificant, and sometimes they even look like they are leading you in the opposite direction of your blessing. That is why they require revelation. That is why they are prophetic. They are revealed not to the clever or the strong, but to the humble, to those who are willing to lay down their own understanding and trust in the architecture of heaven. Think of Peter in the boat. After a long night of catching nothing, Jesus tells him to launch out into the deep and let down his nets for a catch. From Peter's professional perspective, this made no sense. The fish were not biting, the time was wrong, the methods were futile. It was a key that did not seem to fit the lock. But Peter's obedience, his willingness to act on a word that contradicted his experience, was the key that unlocked a catch so great it threatened to break his nets. The key was not his fishing skill, it was his surrendered obedience to a prophetic instruction. These keys are not generic, they are personal and they are seasonal. The key that unlocked your breakthrough last year may not be the key for this new season. God is always specific in His guidance. He may give you a key of silence in a season where you want to speak. He may give you a key of bold declaration in a moment you feel like hiding. He may call you to give away the very thing you believe you need to keep. This is the mystery and the beauty of walking with Him. It is a journey of constant listening, constant yielding, constant trust. The three keys we will uncover are foundational. They are master keys that open many doors. They are the patterns of heaven that, when applied, shift the spiritual atmosphere around your life, your family, and your destiny. They move you from a place of praying for God to do something to a place of partnering with what He is already doing. And so we begin with the first of these master keys, the one that seems to hold the least glamour, yet it is the one upon which all others depend. We call it the key of obedience in the obscure. This is the foundational key, the one that is often overlooked because it is practiced in the unseen places, far from the applause of the crowd. It is the key you use in the field while tending sheep, long before you ever see the palace. It is the key of faithfulness when no one is watching. When the only audience you have is God Himself, so many are waiting for a grand assignment, a momentous task that will catapult them into their destiny. But destiny is not built in a day. It is built in the 1,000 small moments of unseen obedience. It is built when you choose to praise God in a season of lack. It is built when you choose to serve in a ministry that no one sees. It is built when you choose to forgive a wound that no one else knows about. It is built when you remain faithful to your marriage, to your children, to your word, when it feels difficult and uncelebrated. This is the fertile ground where the seeds of overflow are sown. The world celebrates the harvest, but heaven celebrates the faithful sowing in the barren field. This key is so powerful because it aligns your character with your calling. God is less concerned with elevating you to a platform than he is with preparing you to stand on it without falling. The obscure place is his workshop. It is where he sands down the rough edges of your pride, where he strengthens the muscles of your trust, where he teaches you to hear his voice above all others. When you are faithful in the small, the hidden, the difficult, you are not just passing time, you are building spiritual capacity. You are proving to heaven that you can be trusted with more. You are demonstrating that you do not serve God for the blessing, but for the sake of the blesser himself. Consider the life of Joseph. His path to the palace was paved with keys of obedience in the darkest of obscurity. He was faithful in his father's house, then was thrown into a pit. He was faithful in Potiphar's house, and was falsely accused and forgotten in a prison. In any of those moments, he could have decided that obedience did not work. He could have grown bitter and abandoned his integrity. But in every single obscure, difficult, and unfair place, he chose obedience. He chose to honor God, and in doing so, he was unknowingly turning a key. Each act of faithfulness in the dark was aligning him, preparing him, and ultimately positioning him for the moment the door would finally swing open. The overflow he experienced, the authority over a nation, the power to save his family, was not a sudden miracle. It was the cumulative result of a life of turning the same key over and over in the dark. What your obscure place is not your prison, it is your preparation ground. The faithfulness you show there is the master key that unlocks the door to everything God has for you. And so we see that the key of obedience in the obscure prepares the vessel, building within us the character and the capacity to contain the overflow. But a prepared vessel is still an empty one if there is no current to fill it. This brings us to the second key, a key that is often the most difficult to turn because it requires us to act against the evidence of our own reality. We call this the key of faith in the famine. This is the key that accesses provision in the midst of barrenness, that calls forth life from a place of death. It is the key that does not wait for the circumstances to change, but rather changes the circumstances through a stubborn declaration of trust. So many believers understand faith as a response to a blessing. They believe when they see the rain clouds forming. But the faith that unlocks overflow is the faith that breaks the ground in a drought, that sows a precious seed into dry and cracked earth. It is the faith that thanks God for the provision while the pantry is still bare. It is the faith that worships him for the healing while the pain is still present. This kind of faith is not a denial of your reality, it is a declaration of a higher reality. It is the spiritual faculty that reaches into the unseen realm of God's promises and pulls them into the visible realm of your experience. It is the bridge between the ache and the answer. This key is so vital because it is the very substance of the kingdom. It is the currency of heaven. When you choose to believe God's word over the doctor's report, when you choose to declare his abundance over your bank statement, when you choose to speak peace over your chaotic family situation, you are not just being positive. You are engaging in a spiritual transaction. You are withdrawing from your account in heaven and depositing it into your earthly situation. You are, in essence, turning a key. The famine you see is temporary, but the promise of God is eternal. The key of faith allows you to live from the eternal reality into the temporary one, thereby transforming it. This is what we see in the life of Abraham. Faced with a physical body that was as good as dead and a wife, Sarah, whose womb was barren, he was confronted with a severe famine of hope. The circumstances shouted a resounding no, yet, against all hope, and in a situation that was utterly without any earthly reason to believe, he believed. He chose to have faith in the promise. He did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God. His faith was the key that unlocked the miracle of Isaac. His faith in the famine did not just give him a son, it unlocked a generational legacy, an overflow of descendants as numerous as the stars. Your famine may look different. It may be a famine of finances, of opportunity, of joy, or of health. But the principle remains the same. The key of faith is not turned when you see the breakthrough. It is turned in the deepest part of the famine. When you lift your hands and declare that God is your provider, your healer, and your source, regardless of what you see. It is in that moment of defiant trust that you hear the click in the spirit, and the lock on your overflow begins to turn. And so we see how faith in the famine calls forth the substance of things not yet seen, building a bridge from the promise to the present. But there is a final key. A master key that secures the flow and ensures the overflow is not a temporary flash but a continuous river. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive key of all, for it requires a release of what we often cling to most tightly. We call this the key of surrender of the source. This is the key that moves us from being a recipient of blessing to becoming a conduit of it. It is the understanding that true overflow is not about accumulation for ourselves, but about circulation through ourselves. So many reach a point where they receive a measure of blessing, a touch of God's provision, and they make the mistake of closing their hands around it. They believe the blessing is for them to possess, to build a comfortable life, to insulate themselves from need. But anything that is held too tightly becomes stagnant. Water that does not flow becomes a swamp. Manna that is hoarded beyond its day breeds worms and stinks. The key of surrender understands a profound spiritual law, that to retain you must release, to keep the flow you must let it go. Your blessing was never meant to be a terminal lake, but a river that flows through you to water the deserts in other people's lives. This key is the ultimate test of the heart. It reveals whether we love the gift more than the giver. It is the difference between the servant who buried his talent in the ground to keep it safe and the servants who traded with theirs, who took a risk and put it into circulation. The one who buried it operated from a spirit of fear and scarcity. The ones who invested operated from a spirit of trust and abundance, understanding that what their master had given them was not a static object to be preserved, but a living seed to be sown. When you surrender the source, when you give away the very thing you feel you need, you are making a powerful declaration. You are saying, God, you are my source, not this job, not this bank account, not this relationship. I trust you so completely that I can release what you have given me, knowing that you alone are the fountain that will never run dry. We see this key turned with stunning effect in the story of the widow of Zarephath. In the midst of a severe famine, she is preparing her last handful of flour and last few drops of oil to make a final meal for herself and her son before they die. The prophet Elijah arrives and tells her to first make a small cake for him. This was the ultimate test of surrendering the source. Her last meal was her only source of security, her only hope for one more day. To give it away was to embrace what looked like certain death. But when she turned the key of surrender, when she released her only source of security, she unlocked a supernatural principle. The jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry. Her surrender did not create her lack, it broke the power of lack over her life. By letting go of the little she had, she unlocked a continuous flow that sustained her through the entire famine. This is the powerful mystery of the final key. And so we arrive at the culmination, the moment where the prepared vessel, the active faith, and the surrendered heart converge. This is not merely the end of a process, but the beginning of a new state of being. We have moved from the H of the chosen, through the turning of the prophetic keys, and now we stand at the threshold of what it all unlocks. We call this activating your overflow. This is the point where the principles move from theory to testimony, where the hidden work of the Spirit becomes a visible reality in your life. It is the moment the jar of flour no longer fails and the jug of oil no longer runs dry, not as a one-time miracle, but as the new, established order of your existence. This overflow is not primarily about material abundance, though it may include it. It is about a life that is spilling over with the very substance of heaven, with a peace that surpasses understanding, a joy that is unspeakable, and a sense of purpose that is unshakable. It is a life where your resources, your time, your energy, and your influence are no longer bound by the natural limits you once knew. You begin to operate in a divine economy where little becomes much, where 5 loaves and 2 fish feed a multitude, where your obedience in a small matter unlocks authority over much. This is the hundredfold return that Jesus spoke of, a yield that is so disproportionate to the seed sown that it can only be explained by the hand of God. Activating this overflow is not a passive event. It is a conscious positioning. It is the decision to live from the place of promise, not from the place of problem. It is the daily choice to speak the language of the kingdom, the language of faith, of thanksgiving, of declaration, over the loud shouts of your circumstances. It is the deliberate act of aligning your actions, your words, and your thoughts with the reality that you are chosen, equipped, and flowing in a current of divine grace. You become a conduit, a channel. The blessings of God no longer land on you to be absorbed, but they flow to you and through you, touching everyone in your sphere of influence. Your home becomes a place of peace. Your workplace becomes a territory of grace, and your very presence carries the atmosphere of heaven. This is your inheritance as the chosen one. The ache was the invitation, the keys were the path, and the overflow is the destination. It is a life where you are no longer striving to get a blessing, but rather you are learning to steward the constant flow of one. You stop praying for God to fill you up as if you were an empty cup, and you start recognizing that you are a well connected to an endless aquifer, and your responsibility is to prime the pump and let the living water gush forth. This is the abundant life Jesus promised. It is a life of influence, of impact, of quiet confidence, and of tangible grace. It is a life where you finally understand that you were not chosen for your own comfort, but you were chosen to become a source of comfort for a world that is parched and dry, to show them where the true, never-ending stream of life can be found.